And so there is a foul play going on. I do realize that. And I remember many reporters and journalists have told me rather harshly, when I say, that I'm sure that we have learned, mankind have learned from the tobacco scandal. We will not repeat that scandalous behavior again. They just tell me, you are so naive. Of course it's repeated over and over again. But I want to stay naive. I want to believe in mankind, If we should be the premier, top creation on earth, we have to prove our place, really, not by doing over and over again the same kind of scandalous investigations and hideouts and foul play and so on. Also, it's interesting to see that there are big, powerful players that don't believe at all that this is safe. The governments, yes, the parliaments, the authorities, and so on, but there are other very powerful players that don't believe that this is safe, and one of them is, for instance, the telecom companies and the operators themselves. Because if you scrutinize very clearly the kind of licenses and documents they have signed, they have been very, very cautious in signing any form of responsibility agreements. Isn't that odd? We are talking about a completely safe technique. Then it must only pay the ink in the pen to sign your name on a document saying that you will take responsibility for future health costs, because there will be no such costs. There will be no payment in the future. Just the ink in the pen, that was what you paid for, that's all. Or, that's a very odd thing, Another, also very interesting thing, are the insurance companies. Like Lloyd's in the UK, the big reassurance company in Switzerland and so on, the Swedish If Skandia company. There are some things that they don't insure people for, Two of them I could mention, and that's health problems or health effects from genetically modified crops and organisms. You are not insured for any such future problems, And also, they do not insure you for damages due to electromagnetic irradiation.
That means they can slip away from everything now.
Well, of course. And I remember 2004, there was a meeting in London which I attended. Very interesting meeting, I must say. And there were people like lawyers, judges, insurance people and so on from various parts of society. And what they said was that their conclusion is that this is not a safe technique. It's not a matter of if it is or is not safe. It is not safe. That's what they said. And when all the money should be paid to the victims in the future, they do not want to pay. They paid for the tobacco and asbestos, but that is it. They will never ever pay again. So they have been spending probably millions or even more hours thinking about how they should formulate their different insurance policies, the licenses, the agreements, and so on, and they don't want to take responsibility. And again, this is odd, because we are talking about the technique that every authority and government says, this is safe. But the telecom operators and the insurance companies and other powerful players, they say, oh no, this is not safe, but we don't care, because we are not going to pay. And a message cannot be clearer than that. And this has been, for instance, in the big daily newspapers in Sweden, many times it has been described for the consumers. And to the best of my knowledge, very, very few has in any way reacted to this, If, again, I was the Prime Minister, for instance, I would be very upset and scared about this, because that means that my government and my authorities, they have less knowledge about this than a single insurance company somewhere in the world. They know more. And again, I would be very hesitant to constantly irradiate people with such a technology. I wouldn't be so tough on these issues if we were talking about the life necessity. If this was clean water or food that could be eaten, I would maybe be a little bit less tough. But again, we're talking about a toy
that most people have.
Yeah, and the need of which is hidden in haze, I would say,
Yeah. I don't know if you have seen my illustration with the smoke coming out of it.
Yeah.
So there's also a movie called Thank You for Smoking. And the end scene of that is brilliant. So people should watch the movie called Thank You for Smoking. It's about the lobbyism of the tobacco industry and how it's done and all this. But then I just, Shakespeare, he's brilliant. Yeah, he's brilliant. He's all over. All the books are on here. I thought it was brain research, but it's Shakespeare. But okay, something is rotten in the state of Denmark. But when we say rotten, it's some cancer rings in my ear because rotten, it's dark. And then we come back to the Danish Cancer Register. And some years ago, it came forth that they had invested 50 million, actually the amount unique. And they have in stocks. And then I just asked myself, excuse me, why is the Danish Cancer Register investing in stocks? And then it came forth almost at the same time that the Swedish Cancer Register had invested in big tobacco.
I know.
Yeah,
I'm sorry. Because that's a real shame.
But it's this, how you say, it's the same shit every time. But then again, I went to the National Stress Conference in November 2006, and the main speaker was, of course, Christopher Johansen from the Danish Cancer Register, talking about stress and cancer. Now the stress issue is about cancer, but we're talking 10, 15 years, 20 years. But the funny thing was, it was so bloody stupid. I had to leave half through the day because you became sick if you stayed there. But there was this PhD, a young woman, talking about the risk of breast cancer in women. And she said it has something to do that women had come into as a working field. And I just asked her, what do you believe about electromagnetic fields? And I said, have you ever wondered where the breasts are looking? And she was like a big question mark. Breasts are looking at the screen, the computer screen. Have you thought about the radiation in the thin tissue? And she said, no. And she became all red.